Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode to Exponential Potential. We are so close to being our 100th episode, Claire, aren't we?
Oh, I know. It's flying by.
It is. And today we have the wonderful Claire Oatway shining the light on her as our expert guest. Hey, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Always happy to be here with you. And
Go on.
always anticipating anticipating and excited about a really amazing episode as usual.
Yes, indeed, indeed. You ready for some more hot mess action?
Yes. So this month the topic is all around hot mess, and we are talking menopause, ladies and gentlemen. And last week we threw in some curveballs and some controversy. And this week we are talking about menopause in the workplace. Big topic.
Hmm.
And we're going to, excuse me, we're going to break that down and hopefully create a bit more ease. And what else would you say? We're creating some ease around it and some.
But also kind of giving some power back. And I think, you talked about the controversy from, our Kickstart episode. And there's some controversy to come as well in
Mm,
today.
excellent. We like a little controversy. We like to shake the tree, don't we? Cre- Create different ways of thinking, create different perspectives that aren't part of the mainstream.
Yes, indeed.
So let's dive in. So share, share.
Claire.
Can you share, Claire? What's been your own personal experience of menopause in the workplace?
So, for me, in terms of my own experience, and I can talk about that lived experience as a fairly privileged white woman in the UK in an office environment. And the reason why I kind of couch it in that is I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of the commentary around menopause is coming from middle class white women.
Hmm.
And they're generally in creative space or office spaces. So they're kind of not ignoring deliberately, but the experience of women who are in self-employment perhaps, or working in manual jobs, in retail,
Mm-hmm.
in call centers, even kind of the experience of many people is often left out of the whole debate when it comes to menopause. People work in agriculture and
Mm-hmm.
menopause. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm adding the caveat that says, in terms of my experience of menopause, I'm describing where I come from a middle-aged white woman who's living and working in the UK and is working in a stressful office environment.
Mm-hmm. Fairly stressful, highly stressful.
Well, highly stressful because I'm pretty much under control nowadays. So I had been patching for a couple of years, but actually, the biggest thing for me had been around the definitely around sleep and the impact that the hot flushes had for me in terms of sleep. So it would wake me up, and then a kind of level of anxiety that would be running underneath a lot of the time. Sometimes that had been, a feeling of mind fog or forgetfulness, inability to focus, easily distracted. And so very often mixed in with what are symptoms of normal stress. I guess the dial was higher. It was more
Mm-hmm.
kind of accented because I hadn't been sleeping quite so well. And so, I've been very open here around my experiences of burnout, but, reflecting back, there were elements of perimenopause for sure that had aggravated the situation, as it were. Mood swings, in terms of emotional hormonal balance, were an issue. At times, I would come across as, really aggressive and temperamental, and just lost my rag a few times, quite
And
embarrassingly.
how what age were you, Claire, when this started? Because it's different for everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, well, see, for me, it's
When
really
did you
started when I was around
notice?
44, 45, and there'd been a lot else going on. And, I'd been speaking to the doctor around mood swings and irritability. And yes, a lot of it was around stress, but his recommendation had been, well, we can put you on antidepressants for like 1 day a month and then come back off them. It's like on and off, on and off. So, nobody really talked about the fact that I could be perimenopausal. For many women, that 1 day of menopause, on average, hits when you're 51. But many women, it's way before that. And also, the research is demonstrating that you can experience symptoms for up to 4 years before the actual menopause day. You can experience symptoms while you're still having periods, really. And if you've ever gone down the GP route like I did, one of the first rule you out of any menopause support question is, when did you last have a period? And so you don't often realize that you could even be perimenopausal at the time. You're just going through this roller coaster, and it being attributed to many different causes. But certainly I do reflect back now, and those elements were happening in my body and were affecting who I was.
Yeah, so it's kind of being aware, isn't it, that it can happen as young, well, 30, even in your 30s and early 30s, it can. I've actually, I don't know whether how true this is. I heard it, I think it was a doctor talking about it, a woman doctor, and you can have perimenopausal symptoms as young as 28.
Yeah.
So not to brand everything with the same brush, but I think it's important as a woman born into being a woman, to be aware that that is a possibility, even if you're young. It doesn't just happen to, late 40s, 50-year-old women.
Yeah, and also, and when you say that as well, the symptoms will vary quite a lot between different women, and how women manage their symptoms or feel about the symptoms will vary quite dramatically as well. And similarly, the symptoms will vary over time. So they're never quite static, because your body is this bundle of hormones that's pushing you in many different directions. So as I say, for me, it was more around the cognitive and emotional impact that the symptoms had, and the impact that had on my well-being at work. So certainly felt a kind of heightened sense of paranoia in terms of relationships, because I was difficult to work with at times, really quite demanding at times.
She's still really demanding now.
Yeah, don't
No,
raise my
she's
voice
not.
as much. But I know that I know that it was almost like a little bit of an out of body experience in a way. I've been open here and generally around the fertility treatment that I went through in my 30s, and then you are injecting yourself every day, and you realize that your hormones are changing, so you're kind of irrational or tearful. These things come through, whereas with perimenopause, don't have that physical marker that's what could be going on. Just it creeps up, and then you realize that you're not quite yourself. You're not quite as in control. I think that's probably something that many people can relate to.
Yeah. So what did you do to help? So once you noticed or went to the doctor, and even though he said, oh, it's not, it's here's an antidepressive tablet.
Uh,
when you did realize, what did you do anything to help your
well,
symptoms? What sort of things
then
did you put in place?
came the, why don't you go back on the pill so that
Mm,
you can manage your hormonal state, and then you've got
mm,
a bit more, you know when you can expect when things will happen or not happen. So that happened for a little bit of time. In terms of the way that I managed it in the workplace, though, one of the things
mm,
that I did was actually open up to my boss at the time, who's the managing partner, and I'd be quite honest with him about how I'd been behaving. I owned it. It's just like, I've got to tell you, I'm really embarrassed. It's not me. I am seeking help. I think this is happening, and I am seeking help in terms of perimenopause and menopausal symptoms. Please be assured, there's no other big drama that's going on, and it's not personal or intentional at times.
mm. Yeah, because I can. It's not the place. I mean, you don't want mood swings anywhere anyway. They're not conducive to any type of relationship. But at least with the partner, you can be more open. So that was a really vulnerable thing for you to do, wasn't it, Claire? And a male boss as well,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
own it and to be really vulnerable about where you were.
Well, luckily I was working within a healthcare setting. So there was more awareness, not complete awareness, I have to say, in all healthcare settings, but there's a bit more awareness that might be an issue. And it is really hard as a senior leader and as a senior female leader to start to fragment, well, what's stress, because this is a highly stressful situation, what is exacerbated by the manifestation of perimenopause, what is, I'm not feeling that I can cope. Now, I was always worried that people would think that I'm not coping, and that's why this all started. So there's the big element of kind of shame and blame that I put on myself, as well, by coming across as a temperamental banshee.
A temperamental banshee. But what you said,
Why not throw another label? Why not throw another
yes,
stereotype at it? Hey,
yeah, it's some hysterical white woman.
yeah.
How very dare you? But what you said there about the whole stigma around not being able to cope, not being able to manage, and there's a sense of failure underneath that.
Yeah, because so often, and I see this regularly with women that I mentor, especially, if something's not quite right, we'll examine like what our part is playing it first, and it's like, oh, what have I done wrong there? What have I done wrong there? Sometimes people will blame external factors, but particularly among high achievers, you think what you did wrong and what you could need to do to fix it first. And that will be in terms of your general performance and your cognitive performance, rather than your emotional and nutritional or your physical performance. You will tend to go towards that, which again just brings an extra layer of collateral damage, really.
Yeah, just layer it on top, keep layering it. Already exhausted and highly stressed, and hormones are playing havoc. Let's just put a layer of failure and I'm terrible and I can't cope and I can't manage and I must be useless and what's wrong with me? Isn't it? It's what's wrong with me.
Yeah, and also, as well, and we've talked about this many times on the episodes, how we handle anger, again, which is a natural phenomena for many people, but how we handle anger as women and women in leadership roles is really difficult, because there's so many stereotypes around being a bitch or being overly ambitious or being irrational that are associated to female anger that just aren't there when men express their anger or dominance at the table. So you know, these things come out as natural, but we spend a lot of time modifying our behavior and analyzing our behavior, which you know makes it worse.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So do you think workplaces offer enough support, any support?
Well, now this is a really good question, because at the time I was looking at healthcare policy around menopause, because I'd always I kind of had a sense that I was going through and about yeah, and going through the process of menopause, but not really understood it. And you look for answers and you Google it, and many of the time hospitals have got a menopause policy, or a health trust will have a menopause policy, and you go, brilliant. Right, what am I entitled to as a patient? And it's not, it's around how they manage it for their teams. So you can see more and more businesses are starting to introduce menopause policies. They're starting to have more awareness sessions available. They're offering flexible working and informal opportunities for women to talk about the menopause. So I think there's a greater awareness, although it's still not a universal offer for all women in the workplace. It will tend to be public sector or academic or large corporates that offer this. And again, it's in managed environments like offices. It's not necessarily for the shop floor or the factory shop floor or the places. And that's particularly important when you think, actually, it's still leaning towards the cognitive impairment and the productivity impairment, and all these bits like, right, if you're a knowledge worker, we want you at that desk delivering. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a club, and then we'll make sure that you're at work and functioning well at your desk. There's me being cynical and also talking about the reasons why they're investing in menopause support. But I don't think that line managers really understand menopause. And I think very often men as line managers won't necessarily understand the menopause. When we interviewed Alex from Andy's Man Club, you can see how rare he is. And when he goes to Andy's Man Club and talks to other men about menopause, he describes how they all go, oh no, we're talking about menstrues next. Oh no. So in a workplace, it's still quite a hidden topic. But
I think it's very uncomfortable to talk about. I think it can be difficult for women to talk about, though.
Very
as well.
Difficult. Yes.
To sort of admit, instead of that stoic, right, I can get through this and let's crack on and everything's fine and rosy and I'm not going to pay any attention, I'm fine. So for men, it must be even harder.
Yeah.
Because they don't have any grasp of it at all. I mean, I used to have a boss, and if you wanted a day off, you just mentioned that you're on your period, and that would be, no, I don't want to hear anymore. And, it was a great little, if you wanted to have a day off and you really weren't sick, you just mentioned, drop the P-bomb. No!
Really, equally, it is very much, especially in the workplace, very much wrapped up in sexism and ageism, and kind of how we treat older females. And so we talked about this in our last interview together, is you kind of don't want to admit that you're getting old, and menopause is attached with getting old, and all those negative stereotypes that you can think of. But in a workplace, it feels even more like you'll be cast aside, or you'll be past your best, or both aspects independently. Both sexism and ageism are very present within workplaces, and so you don't want to be an outlier, so you don't want to necessarily have that stigma attached. And what's really interesting around this debate is that the different menopause societies have got different viewpoints. So the European Menopause Society recognises the value of a menopause policy, but strongly advises against having a standalone menopause policy, and strongly instead advises that a menopause policy should be within the general health and well-being policy. Because kind of the more that you have a standalone policy, the more open you are for kind of the stigma to be attached to being someone who's going through the menopause. They talked about different ways of tackling it and saying, well, maybe we should have annual menopause checks for women aged over. It's like, no, don't do that. We're not having that conversation with ourselves. I don't want my boss like starting it, but I do want my boss to be around if I need help.
And I mean, the whole it can feel it. I think a lot of women that I speak to do feel very vulnerable. Like you say, in the workplace, it's a sign of age, and oh my God, I'm going to be cast aside, and someone younger is going to take over because I seem to be old and I can't do the job anymore. But there is a vulnerability as well in the unknown, the not knowing. Not knowing of how the symptoms are going to affect you, and how quickly you're going to age, but more so, I think more so the symptoms. It's that fear we talked about in our last episode we did together, the fear around, oh my God, menopause is this thing to be scared of. It's this big scary monster, and it's not. And as you said about pulling it into a menopausal policy, but having that as part of health and well-being, because it is a natural step. It's not something alien to us. It's part of every woman's journey.
And having a menopause policy, or having a menopause friendly workplace, is having a body and a human friendly workplace. Kind of aging men, young men who've kind of had an accident. How do you put in place whatever flexible working arrangements you can? How do you help people to consider their health and safety, and how they're in teamwork, and the opportunity for breaks if they need to let off steam? That's not just the domain of women that are going through the menopause spectrum. I think it just helps everybody.
And do you think that's happening because there's been such a big rah 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 about it? There's been such a spotlight on the menopause. It's like it's something new, and it's like, hello, it's not new. It's been around since women have been around. It's not like this new problem.
So personally, I have for a long time had a massive issue with Davina and really banging the menopause drum, because in a workplace environment, women, we were only just really trusted to take on leadership roles. And then not all of us are trusted to take on leadership roles. And so we have been fighting for decades to have a place around the table, fighting against stereotypes and stigmas. Then all of a sudden we go, oh, by the way, we might turn really angry and vicious and moody and have hot flushes and make you feel uncomfortable when we turn 50. Like, what's that going to do to your career chances? It's like, no, not helpful at all. And so I think kind of there has been, some really healthy open debate, and Davina's done an amazing job at raising awareness and helping women to advocate for their own needs in healthcare, and encouraging more and more clinicians to understand menopause. but I do think, you know, we need to be so careful, because we don't have equal status legally, but in practical day-to-day life and in our social life and in our working life, we do not have equal status as women, let alone women who are aging. So I do think kind of it's brilliant to see that nuance coming through within the policies. And also, one of the other really interesting pieces that I heard in a podcast, was a Scottish academic who'd been studying menopause in the workplace, and she noted, and again, kind of, it tends to be white middle class women in office-based professions that were talking about menopause, not women who were in a variety of settings. And also, a lot of the elements around workplace and the menopause, a lot of the material is being driven by training providers who specialize in delivering training on women and menopause in the workplace. And so it's really pushing, heightening the demands and nervousness among HR directors, when the vast majority of women do manage the transition through. Yes, some women have extreme reactions, some women don't. We've talked about that. So it's not appropriate to say that we all have extreme reactions, and it causes a lot of harm, I think.
Yeah. But I think, like you say, Davina's done a huge amount with awareness, and so that people are, and I'm sure that it's not just Davina.
Sorry, she's like the poster girl.
yeah. But I think because of that awareness, it's like, right, okay, what needs to be done, and having some, like you say, some policies in place now. It's the way it's done isn't that takes away that stigma. So how can we reduce the stigma around? We've just spoken quite a bit about lack of equality and the stigma around, oh my God, woman of a certain age is going to be menopausal soon, and it's going to be hell. It's going to be a nightmare. She's going to be a nightmare. It's going to disrupt the team. It's going to affect productivity. She's going to be off sick all the time. She's going to have blah, blah, blah. So how do we reduce that stigma?
So I think we open up to offer support to everybody in the workplace, and kind of, if you're not in the workplace, find support in different ways. So if you are a woman who is going through the menopause, talk about it. Just talk to your mum about it. Ask her questions. Workplaces are brilliant because there are many generations in the same spot. So there will be older women who are more likely to have been through the menopause. There you could start to talk to. But much in the same way as you would open up to have a conversation about, so you're going through divorce, or your child is 4, crikey. I remember those days. It's just to externalize it in a way. Just ask questions that you understand what other people go through. So you understand if your reactions are normal reactions, or if there are different ways to manage, or the support that you can access, whether that be clinical support or elsewhere. I think if you're somebody who is living with, or loves, or works with a woman who could be of an age where she's starting to be affected by menopause, there's a level of understanding and awareness, and that gives grace, that not quite gives permission to break boundaries, but is understanding when there are changes going on. I talked to Alex. Alex was hilarious because he shares stories of men that buy a menopause book and throw them at their wife or girlfriend, and then close the door and run away. So say, we need to have a conversation about this. But very often the people that are around us are picking up on the cues far earlier than we are, and they're not sure how to broach the conversation, or they're not sure what the root cause is. And if you're there and want to start the conversation, do. But otherwise, just be kind, offer a little buffer in terms of time and in terms of where they are, be understanding, be curious, perhaps, but see if there's anything that's underlying, but, just give a little bit of space.
Yeah, space is quite important, especially when someone is in full anger mode because they're just being triggered by something and they're just but
Well,
I just want to go back to that anyway, in terms of, so Alex is a guest that's a male guest, and
yeah,
he talks about menopause from a male point of view, because although we are women and we are going through it, our partners and our husbands, our partners are going through it as well.
yes, yeah.
From a different side of things. So we get his perspective, which is really interesting.
Well, he says that, his wife has the physical symptoms, but they are both going through the menopause. I think that's a really nice way of looking at it.
Yeah, and I really highly recommend tuning into that, because it's not from a sort of a, oh God, yeah, we've got to suffer it too mentality at all. It's lovely because it's creating understanding and support. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that. So
Well,
really
particularly
good
around
one to listen to.
stigma, because Andy's Man Club, and we give them massive pushes in the episode, but Andy's Man Club were formed after the completed suicide of a young man called Andy from Manchester. And it was designed to give space for men to talk freely and openly with other men about where they are, what they were experiencing, what they were going through. So talking about suicide is highly stigmatized. We don't do that. We don't do that in polite society. It's like it happens, and it's really important to talk about it. And in a way, Alex from Annie's Man Club described this as well. It's like they understand how to tackle stigma, and so for menopause as a man, talking about it is really important, and talking with other men about it as well is really important, because you start to challenge the stigma about broaching the conversation. This isn't like the end of the world. It's just the menopause.
It's a natural way of being. It's our natural state as a woman. Unless you've had severe, extreme surgery, we all go through it. Women. Yeah. So I think you said about being kind. It's being kind to yourself and being kind to others. And that's not necessarily always easy when you're in the moment of it. So I think listening to one of our other episodes, that myself and Claire did, the first episode, there's a load of information in there about the things that you can do for yourself to feel more empowered. What is there anything else in terms of workplace support? Is there any other things that workplaces, if anyone's listening to this, that's got power of making changes, although we all have the power to make change within a workplace. So what can we do? What can we do in the workplace for more support?
I think
anything else
described earlier, what I went through the mood swings of perimenopause. I went through all of those ups and downs. I also went through stress in a highly stressful environment. And that was compounded by the additional stress that I put on myself as a high achiever, worried that other people would think that I can't do my job or I wasn't coping. So all of that extra. Now, if you can provide an environment that gives allowance to people, or just hell, actually not even give allowances when performance is slipping, because so often performance isn't slipping. But notice when people are doing a job well, give them feedback that they're doing a job well, because through their lens, they may not feel that they are. They're going through something else. So the judgment will be super, super high. So they need that extra support, extra recognition, extra, yep, this is going brilliantly, isn't it? Because it provides a lot more balance. And I think that's probably the same for any workplace that experiences anxiety or stress or depression. By the way, that's nearly every single organization on the planet. If we can normalize giving feedback, and even try to give more positive feedback to balance out the negative, yeah, I think that makes a big difference. And it's around being not just body positive and understanding what people go through, and understanding those changes, and having policies in place that support changes. It's being, really quite human centered in design, just positive about all the life changes that people go through, whether that's young children, whether that's struggles with children, whether that's needs from older parents, whether it's your own physical health needs, or we all go through with our own challenges. And so setting in place a culture that supports and embraces that diversity, that provides the space, the positive encouragement when it's needed, and also the balance and reinforcement that brings people back to the expectations of what they're doing in their job. Those aren't hard things to do, but they're very often missed in a busy environment.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Very, very helpful. And I think my connection is a little bit unstable, so I'm not sure how much of this you're getting. We have storms. We have big storms. So I do apologize. I apologize to the listeners if I've gone a bit faded and in and out, a bit disconnected. But yes, that was, thank you very much, Claire. And if you have any comments, or you are looking for help or reach out, then do reach out to people. Reach out, like you said earlier, Claire, talk about what's going on within you, because it is a natural state of being. It's what we go through, and there is support and help out there for you. Anything else you want to add, Claire?
No. So I was laughing because it's like so suck it up. We're not saying suck it up. We're saying it's human, it's normal. Let's just take one foot in front of the other foot, in front of the other foot. There'll be ways that you can find support and help. And there'll be ways that you will know and understand your body and your emotional state to have more balance, to be more grounded and resilient. And menopause definitely tests that. But it's really important to find what works.
Yeah, and I think if you feel like, if you're called to start an initiative within your workplace, start an initiative. If there's nothing there, if they don't feel that there's enough support there, then you don't have to be a decision maker to put something in place. So yes, we all have the power to make our own lives easier. Well, thank you very much for listening. If you've got any comments or questions, please put them in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And if you feel that this could help someone, please pass it on. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks very much. Till next time.
Bye.